"He's a dinosaur," the man on stage said, pointing at me. "A relic fighting the future." My name is Caleb Hayes. I'm 46 years old, and until that town hall meeting, I was the fourth-generation farmer of Hayes Valley. The man on stage was Leo Vance, the charismatic CEO of OmniGen, a multi-billion-dollar agri-tech corporation. He had a tailored suit, a perfect smile, and the predatory stillness of a hawk. The town hall was packed with my neighbors, people whose families had farmed alongside mine for a century. Most had already sold their land to him. I was the last holdout. "Mr. Hayes wants to talk about tradition," Vance said into the microphone, his voice dripping with condescending pity. "He wants to talk about his great-grandfather's wisdom." "I'm here to talk about progress. About AI-optimized yields, drone-based irrigation, and feeding the world. We can't let sentimentalism stand in the way of innovation." The crowd applauded. Not everyone, but enough. They'd been convinced by Vance's promises of jobs and prosperity. I stood up from my seat in the front row. "My family's wisdom kept this valley fertile for 150 years, I said, my voice steady. "Your algorithm has never seen a winter here." Vance laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Thank you for your input, Mr. Hayes. But the future has been decided." 2 days later, the final eviction notice arrived. A week after that, I watched from the road as 2 yellow bulldozers tore into the farmhouse my great-grandfather had built with his own hands. They didn't just knock it down, they pulverized it, grinding a century and a half of my family's history into the dirt. I didn't yell. I didn't protest. I just sat in my truck, made sure the passenger seat was secure, and drove away. In that seat was a single dusty wooden box. It held all that was left of my legacy. A stack of leather-bound almanacs, my great-grandfather's handwritten record of every season, every flood, every harvest, every secret this valley held. Vance had bought my land, but he had no idea what he'd actually taken. He thought he'd acquired dirt. I knew he'd inherited a debt, and the land itself would be the one to collect. My great-grandfather, Samuel Hayes, found this valley in 1888. It was a coastal estuary, a rare pocket of volcanic soil, shielded from the harsh inland winds by a crescent of low mountains. He wrote in his first almanac that the soil breathed differently than any he'd ever known. He spent 50 years learning its language, its moods, its cycles. He documented the strange, unmappable microclimates, the way fog from the coast would snake up one side of the valley, but not the other, the way a sudden frost could hit one field while leaving its neighbor untouched. My grandfather continued the tradition, adding his own observations about crop rotation and pest control. My father taught me, not with textbooks, but with the almanacs and his hands in the soil. "You don't own this land, Caleb," he'd tell me. "You're just its caretaker. Your job is to listen to it and pass it on healthier than you found it." I married my high school sweetheart, Sarah, and we raised our daughter, Emily, in that same farmhouse. We weren't rich, but we had a good life. We supplied organic produce to restaurants up and down the coast. Our farm was known for its quality, its reliability. When Sarah got sick, the community rallied around us. After she passed, farming was what kept me grounded, what connected me to our shared past. Then Leo Vance arrived. He came to town 6 months ago, hosting barbecues and promising a new era of prosperity. He was smooth, persuasive, painting a picture of a futuristic agricultural paradise. A flagship fully automated AI-optimized megafarm that would be a showcase for his company's upcoming IPO. He offered my neighbors prices they couldn't refuse, 4 times the market value of their land. One by one, they sold. I met with him in my kitchen, the same kitchen where my grandfather had signed his own deed. Vance looked out of place, his expensive shoes scuffing the worn floorboards. "Caleb, I respect what your family has built here," he said, gesturing around. "But it's time to evolve. My AI, Helios, can manage this entire valley more efficiently than 100 farmers." "Your AI doesn't know about the saltwater intrusion after a winter storm," I said. "It doesn't know which fields are prone to root rot in a wet spring." He smiled. "It knows satellite weather patterns, soil composition down to the molecule, and predictive analytics that can anticipate problems before they happen. With all due respect, your notebooks can't compete with that." I politely declined his offer. He doubled it. I declined again. His smile tightened. "Everyone has a price," he said. "My price is that you leave this valley alone," I told him. He didn't like that. A month later, the legal notices started. He used a hostile takeover strategy, buying up the debt of our local farming co-op, which held a lien on my property from a loan my father took out 20 years ago. It was legal, brutal, and effective. He didn't just want my land, he wanted to make an example of me. He wanted to prove that the old ways were worthless against the new. That's what the town hall meeting was about, a public execution of my family's legacy. The night after they bulldozed the house, I sat in my small rental apartment on a hill overlooking the valley. Emily called, crying. "Dad, how could they do that?" "It's just a building, honey," I said, though it felt like a lie. "The real farm is still there." I opened the box and took out the oldest almanac, its leather cover cracked with age. I turned to the section my father had shown me years ago, a chapter he called The Valley's Fever. My great-grandfather had documented a rare, cyclical soil fungus. He called it the ghost spore, Fusarium dormiens, the sleeping sickness. It was harmless, dormant for 6 years at a time. But in the 7th year, it would awaken. His notes were precise. The fungus thrived on specific nitrogen compounds and was killed by potassium sourced from the ash of a particular local ironwood tree. If you fertilized with the wrong mixture during the 7th year cycle, you wouldn't just feed the crops, you'd trigger a catastrophic fungal bloom. The bloom would produce a neurotoxin that didn't just kill the plants, it sterilized the soil, turning the richest dirt in the state into a toxic, barren wasteland. I checked the dates. This year was the 7th year. The cycle was due to begin in late spring, right when OmniGen's first crops would be in the ground. I closed the book and looked out the window. Down in the valley, 100 construction vehicles were working under massive floodlights, leveling fields, installing irrigation systems, preparing the ground for Leo Vance's technological marvel. His AI Helios would read the soil, detect a nitrogen deficiency, and pump it full of the exact compound the ghost spore loved. It was a mistake a machine was guaranteed to make. It was a mistake a farmer who listened to the land would never. I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to call a lawyer or warn anyone. I just needed to watch and wait and let my great-grandfather's words prove their worth. For the next 4 months, I watched the valley transform. An army of robots methodically planted seeds. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning every inch of soil. A massive, gleaming processing facility rose where my barn used to be. The media loved it. Tech journals and business magazines ran glowing articles about OmniGen's farm of the future. Leo Vance was on the cover of Forbes, hailed as a visionary. He never missed a chance to mention the stubborn old farmer he'd replaced. In one interview, he said, "The Caleb Hayeses of the world are a bottleneck to progress. We're moving beyond the age of intuition and into the age of data." I kept to myself. I got a job doing landscaping in the next town over, enough to pay my rent. Every night, I'd come home, make dinner, and read the almanacs. Not just the part about the fungus, but all of it. Stories of my family, of their struggles and triumphs. I wasn't just waiting for Vance to fail. I was reconnecting with the knowledge he'd called obsolete. In late May, the first sprouts appeared, a perfect, uniform carpet of green across the valley floor. OmniGen's press releases were triumphant. Helios AI achieves 99.7% germination rate, one headline read. Their stock price soared in anticipation of the IPO. Then, in mid-June, I saw the first sign. A faint yellowing at the edges of the fields closest to the old creek bed, right where my great-grandfather had noted the ghost spore was most prevalent. It was happening. I pulled out the almanac from 1951, the year of the last major bloom. My grandfather had written, "The sickness starts slow, a pale cast on the leaves, like a morning frost that won't burn off. The common man sees a thirsty crop and gives it water and nitrogen. He is giving poison to a sick friend. Only the ash will save it." I watched through binoculars as OmniGen's drones descended on the yellowing patches. A day later, the fields looked greener. Vance had seen a thirsty crop. He'd given it poison. The nitrogen fertilizer was like gasoline on a fire for the fungus. A week later, the yellowing was back, wider and more aggressive. Patches of brown began to appear. I could see the activity in the valley intensify. More trucks, more equipment moving around. I imagined the panic inside the OmniGen facility. Their AI Helios would be analyzing the data, seeing a nutrient deficiency, and recommending the same failed solution, only in larger doses. A machine can't recognize when its own logic is the problem. By early July, a strange, sweet, rotting smell began to drift up the hill on the evening breeze. The valley floor was no longer green. It was a mottled, dying patchwork of yellow and brown. The tech blogs that had praised the project were now silent. Local news crews started showing up, filming from a road, kept back by OmniGen security. Vance's company scheduled a major investor event for the first week of August. It was meant to be a triumphant tour of a thriving, automated farm, the final push before their IPO. They'd sent out invitations months in advance. They couldn't cancel without admitting catastrophic failure. The day of the event, I sat on my small porch with a cup of coffee. Around 10 a.m., a fleet of black helicopters descended into the valley, landing near the main facility. I didn't need binoculars to see the disaster. The entire valley, from the mountains to the coast, was dead. Not just withered, but decayed. A brown, toxic sludge covered the fields. The air hung thick with the stench of decay. I pictured Leo Vance, his perfect smile frozen on his face, trying to explain this to the stony-faced investors who had gambled billions on his vision. He'd promised them the future. He'd delivered a wasteland. That afternoon, OmniGen stock collapsed. It fell 80% before trading was halted. The IPO was officially canceled. The news stories were brutal. Billion-dollar farm becomes toxic wasteland. OmniGen's AI-driven future ends in catastrophic failure. Experts were baffled, blaming a mysterious, aggressive soil pathogen. No one knew the cause. No one except me. A week later, a black car pulled up to my apartment. Leo Vance got out. He looked smaller, diminished. The charisma was gone, replaced by a raw, desperate exhaustion. He walked up my porch steps and stopped in front of me. "Hayes," he said. His voice was hoarse. I just looked at him, saying nothing. "How did you know?" he asked. "The soil reports, they're saying it's completely sterile. It'll take a decade, maybe more, to recover. The chemists can't even identify the specific toxin. How did you know this would happen?" "I didn't know," I said truthfully. "The land did. I just listened." He stared at me, uncomprehending. "I've been authorized to offer you a consulting fee," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Whatever you want. Name your price. $10 million. 20. Just tell us how to fix it." I thought about it for a moment. I thought about my old farmhouse, about my father's words, about the 150 years of care my family had poured into that soil. I thought about him calling me a dinosaur in front of my neighbors. "There are some things your money can't buy, Mr. Vance," I said, "and some things it can't fix." He looked like I'd struck him. He opened his mouth to say something else, then just shook his head and walked back to his car. That was my revenge. Not in a courtroom, not in a fight. Just watching him be defeated by the very thing he'd mocked, simple, hard-won knowledge of the earth. He hadn't been beaten by a rival corporation. He'd been beaten by dirt. The federal investigation into OmniGen's collapse revealed that Vance had hidden early signs of the crop failure from his board and investors, a crime that added prison time to his financial ruin. The company went bankrupt, its assets sold for pennies on the dollar. The valley, my valley, was declared an environmental hazard site and cordoned off. A few months later, I used the money from the forced sale of my land to buy a small, 10-acre plot on the other side of the mountains. The soil wasn't as good, but it was mine. I started a small, community-funded project with some of the younger generation from my old town, kids of the farmers who had sold out to Vance. They'd seen what his future looked like, and now they wanted to learn the past. We don't use drones or robots. We use the knowledge in my great-grandfather's almanacs. We're teaching them about crop rotation, soil health, and how to listen to the land. It's slow, hard work. We're not building a billion-dollar empire. We're just building a farm. Sometimes from the high ridge on my new property, I can see across the mountains into Hayes Valley. It's still brown and barren, a scar on the landscape. A silent, rusting monument to Leo Vance's hubris. He tried to buy the future, but he forgot that the future has to grow from the past. My family knew that. And now a new generation is learning it, too. The almanacs are open on the table, and we're writing a new chapter.